Tennessee tornado live updates. Nashville hit and 22 killed across state. A powerful storm system cut a path through the middle of Tennessee in the early morning hours, shredding buildings, toppling electrical lines and littering streets with debris. By Richard Fausset, Rick Rojas, and Steve Cavendish. Right now at least 16 of the fatalities were reported in Putnam County, roughly 80 miles east of Nashville. Here's what you need to know. At least 22 people died as the storms cut a path across Tennessee. In Nashville, buildings were eviscerated and streets were filled with debris. A couple was killed while running to their car for shelter. Schools are closed and tens of thousands of people have lost power. First, the telltale sound of an approaching tornado, and then there was destruction. The storm stirred thoughts of East Nashville's hipster revolution, and the tornado that helped fuel it. President Trump will visit Nashville on Friday. At least 22 people died as the storms cut a path across Tennessee. Nashville, a powerful storm early Tuesday spawned tornadoes that ripped through Tennessee, killing at least 22 people and creating a trail of devastation that struck Nashville and stretched across several counties in the central part of the state. Officials said the full extent of the storm's wrath remained impossible to grasp, as the death toll climbed and an untold number of people were unaccounted for as of Tuesday morning. At least 16 fatalities were reported in Putnam County, roughly 80 miles east of Nashville, and deaths were also reported in Davidson, Benton, and Wilson counties. In Nashville, the police said a man and a woman had died after being struck by debris in East Nashville, an area of the city that had been among the hardest hit. We have much to know and much to learn in the hours ahead, Governor Bill Lee told reporters at a news conference on Tuesday morning. Asked if he knew how many people were missing, he replied, "We don't know that yet. Reports are just coming in. It's still early yet." The tornadoes cut a path through the middle of Tennessee in the early morning hours on Tuesday. A line of severe storms moved through the region starting on Monday, and late in the day, the National Weather Service urged people to take cover as forecasters warned of severe thunderstorms and the potential for tornadoes. Where tornadoes were reported in Tennessee. In Nashville, buildings were eviscerated and streets were filled with debris. In Nashville alone, the authorities reported that at least 48 structures had either partially or completely collapsed. It is a massive act of nature, John Cooper, Nashville's mayor, said at a briefing on Tuesday morning. Officials warned that the number of confirmed fatalities could rise, as officials were still working to get a handle on the reach of the devastation and emergency workers continued to search through the rubble of damaged buildings. Police officers were going house to house in some areas, and road crews were clearing streets and dangerous electrical debris. It's not looking good right now. We still have several people missing, a lot of loved ones calling and wanting us to locate their family, Sheriff Eddie Ferris of Putnam County told a local news station, WKRN. We certainly hope that number doesn't go up, but it's not looking real promising at this point. In Nashville, fire officials said that more than 400 emergency calls had been made in the hours since the tornado touched down. Much of the damage in the city was concentrated in the Germantown neighborhood, which is north of downtown, and in East Nashville, including considerable devastation in the popular Five Points area. Photographs and videos spread on social media showing buildings that had been shredded and streets strewn with debris. Residents reported homes with roofs that had been stripped off and windows that had been blown out. The John C. Toon Airport, 6 miles west of downtown, sustained significant damage, with several hangars destroyed and power lines down, but none was reported at Nashville International Airport. On one local television newscast, an anchor showed viewers side-by-side photographs of streets lined with popular restaurants, hangouts and murals alongside the rubble that had taken their place. The Basement East, a popular music venue, was severely damaged, and the roof appeared to have blown off. All staff working tonight are okay. The venue said on its Twitter account. Building sustained significant damage. Nearby, Attaboy, a bar near the Basement East that was popular with restaurant employees, was also flattened. At the briefing on Tuesday, Mr. Cooper pointed out one auto parts store that had been decimated, which he saw as a sign of the tornado's raw strength. There was no stopping that, he told reporters. That just came out of the sky. A couple was killed while running to their car for shelter. A woman and a man who had moved to Nashville about 18 months ago were killed early Tuesday morning, moments after leaving Attaboy, the bar that was flattened by the tornado. The Metro Nashville Police Department confirmed the deaths and identifies of the couple, Aubrey Elaine Sexton and her boyfriend, Michael Bolfini. Miss Sexton and Mr. Bolfini had been living in California and planning to move to Asheville, North Carolina, when they stopped in East Nashville's Five Points neighborhood. But the couple fell in love with the area and never left, said Kara Graham, Miss Sexton's boss at the Lockland Table, a restaurant. Miss Graham said the couple had been at Attaboy with other Lockland Table employees when the tornado struck. The pair tried to run to their car, but Miss Sexton was struck by debris and died at the scene. Mr. Bolfini was taken to the trauma center at Skyline Medical Center and died there, Miss Graham said. Miss Graham said the couple had talked about opening a restaurant together. Ms. Sexton, she said, was an eager and enthusiastic learner. I have never had someone walk into our restaurant home and become more ingrained in our fabric, Miss Graham said. She was amazing. She fit right in and was so kind. Schools are closed and tens of thousands of people have lost power. The police in Mount Juliet, an eastern suburb of Nashville, said on Twitter that several people in the city had been injured and several residences had been destroyed, and they urged residents to stay home. In Benton County, about 100 miles west of Nashville, at least 3 fatalities had been reported and officials were out assessing the toll. Power lines and roads down and of course electric was out, but much of that cleared and restored very timely, Brett Lashley, the county's mayor, said in an email. More to come as we tour areas. Officials urged residents to stay home if they could, noting the dangers posed by debris and downed electrical lines. Schools in Nashville and elsewhere were closed on Tuesday. Nashville Electric Service is currently working to restore power to more than 47,000 customers. First, the telltale sound of an approaching tornado, and then there was destruction. Patsby and his wife had just a few seconds before everything imploded. I was watching it out the window, and the front window implodes, and I realized it was getting bad real quick, said Mr. Sby, who co-owns various artists' brewery and restaurant. His East Nashville home on Holly Street was built in 1893 and is just a few steps away from bars in the popular Five Points area. It sounded like the typical train, he said. I saw people running from the bars to their cars. Mr. Sby and his wife headed for their basement, but the entrance was blocked by something heavy. So we grabbed our 8-year-old son and covered him in blankets, he said. We tried to get to the center of the house, but stuff was just coming in. He then tallied the damage. I lost 3 out of 4 chimneys. Almost all of the windows are broken out, including storm windows and interior. The back porch is pulled off the house. 2 trees are downed in my backyard. Both cars are damaged, one of them totaled. That's a lot to happen in less than 40 seconds. Nearby, Anna Kate and Andrew Ross were on the upper floor of their home when they heard the tornado's approach. As they scrambled downstairs with their daughters to a crawlspace, the tremendous wind ripped off a side of their house. A neighbor's garage apartment was knocked off its foundation, throwing the resident into the Ross's backyard, where the man scrambled through what remained of their back porch and into their home. The tornado left some of its biggest messes and heartache in North Nashville and into nearby Germantown, a neighborhood of quaint cottages established in the 1850s by European immigrants. Old storefronts had been ripped apart, with big red spilling piles of bricks in heaps. A second-floor kitchen in an apartment over a storefront was exposed to the blue sky Tuesday morning, with dusty wine bottles visible near a stainless steel stove. Felled trees and snapped power poles were everywhere. The rebuilding work had begun early in the morning. Crews and volunteers cleared debris and handed out water. Trucks carrying workers arrived. The whine of chainsaws was everywhere. With gentrification, the neighborhoods became a mash of income brackets. In a smart first-floor condo, Stephen Gill, 33, a financial analyst, and his boyfriend, Michael Overby, 35, a clinical research associate, busily swept up the debris and glass and junk that was scattered around. This was a friend's place, they said. He was out of town in Canada. After the tornado came, Mr. Gill and Mr. Overby, whose place was spared, walked over and saw that the windows of their friend's place were smashed in. So they crawled through one of the windows and got to work. "We're just trying to get it ready," Mr. Gill said, "so he doesn't come home to a total disaster." The storm stirred thoughts of East Nashville's hipster revolution, and the tornado that helped fuel it. Don Cornelius stood on a battered street in North Nashville, looking at Mount Bethel Missionary Baptist Church, where she had spent many Sunday mornings as a child. The tornado had torn off much of the roof and then the rain came. "It was a mess in there," she said. A handsome newer building behind the old brick church had been violently ripped open as if giant greedy hands had unwrapped a gift. Miss Cornelius, 47, held a shard of the old church sign. A friend came in for a hug. "This is scary for me," she said. Members of her African-American family had settled in North Nashville beginning in the 1950s, as white flight was beginning. They settled in and built a community. Churches like Mount Bethel served as corner anchors. Many of them were ravaged now. A few years ago, as Nashville got trendy, new houses and condos went up everywhere, and a new, cool, young, and largely white contingent of neighbors came in. Developers started putting up the tall narrow space maximizing houses on little lots that Nashvillians have taken to calling skinnies. Miss Cornelius lives in another neighborhood these days, but these streets still felt like home. In some cases, the homes had made it through with minimal damage. But many new places, some of them without the siding even on yet, and old cottages had been torn up and ripped apart. It was the old places, with the old neighbors, she worried about. She saw it happen in 1998, she said, with the tornado that ripped up East Nashville. It ushered in the hipster movement there, said Ms. Cornelius, who works with the Chamber of Commerce. She said she had nothing against new white neighbors in places like this one. What she worried about was black families losing toehold on the middle-class dream here. Marginalized communities are not going to be able to rebuild, she said. President Trump will visit Nashville on Friday. President Trump said that he would visit the Nashville area on Friday, adding that he was working with state officials and that the Federal Emergency Management Agency was already on the ground. "Our hearts are full of sorrow for the lives that were lost," he said, speaking at a conference for the National Association of Counties in Washington. "It's a vicious thing, those tornadoes. I've seen many of them during a 3-year period and I've gotten to see the results, and they are vicious if you are in their path. We will get there, and we will recover, and we will rebuild, and we will help them," he added. Videos and photos on social media showed the power of the storms. They were shared on social media by stunned residents, weather forecasters and local news reporters. Sam Schamberger, the lead forecaster at National Weather Service Nashville, shared a video of the tornado passing near the downtown area, stirring up debris amid bursts of lightning. After sunrise, the scale of the tornado's devastation became clearer, and the police shared aerial pictures of homes and businesses utterly demolished by the storm. The John C. Toone Airport had debris scattered on the runways and surrounding fields. The former Tennessee State Prison, a 122-year-old building that is no longer used to incarcerate people and was a filming location for the Green Mile, was also damaged. Still, polls were open for the primary on Tuesday. Tennessee is one of the 14 states voting on Super Tuesday. Election officials said that the start of voting in Wilson and Davidson counties, which includes Nashville, had been pushed back an hour because of street closures, power outages and damage to polling locations. Working with election officials around the state to ensure polls in affected counties are open for the required 10 hours today, Tennessee's Secretary of State, Trey Hargett, said in a post on Twitter on Tuesday morning, adding later, "I know this pales by comparison to what many are dealing with this am." Big thank you to our election officials who are working through some difficult circumstances today. Unlike hurricanes, tornadoes have been harder to link to a warming world. Scientists have been able to show a link between climate change and many kinds of extreme weather, including hurricanes, flooding, heat waves and drought. Tornadoes, however, have been harder to connect to the effects of a warming world, at least so far. A connection makes intuitive sense. Tornadoes are produced by heavy storms, and the most recent edition of the National Climate Assessment, reflecting the work of scientists in 13 government agencies, found observed and projected increases in the frequency of organized clusters of thunderstorms and the amount of precipitation associated with them. Still, part of the problem of finding a link between tornadoes and climate change is that data on tornadoes is fairly spotty compared to other weather phenomena like temperature records. With tornadoes, on the other hand, the 1990s tornado data was based largely on observations on the ground. Many were missed. Modern Doppler radar means more tornadoes are seen today, but long-term trends are hard to build from a shorter time record. Some research is suggesting that the data is starting to show patterns, however. A 2016 study found that the frequency of outbreaks that generate many tornadoes is increasing, and a study last year found that Tornado Alley, the stretch of the central and southern Great Plains, has begun to shift eastward Midwest and Southeast. The fact that a link is hard to establish today is little comfort, however, since more frequent tornadoes are predicted by most climate models as global temperatures rise. History shows this is tornado season for Tennessee, particularly East Nashville. Tennessee has been struck by tornadoes during this time of the year again and again going back decades. One of the deadliest came on March 14, 1933, when 11 people were killed and parts of East Nashville were virtually leveled by the tornado. And on April 16, 1998, an outbreak of about a dozen tornadoes swept through Middle Tennessee. It was an extraordinary event, according to meteorologists, as it included multiple powerful and violent tornadoes that traveled considerable distances and because the spree stretched on for nearly an entire day. In all, the tornadoes then killed 4 people and injured nearly 100. It also hit downtown Nashville, blowing out windows from skyscrapers and knocking down some older buildings. The storm devastated East Nashville, damaging or destroying many homes. The event was widely regarded as a spark in the revitalization in the area. It became one of Nashville's hipper neighborhoods, with new development and trendy restaurants and hangouts, including those seriously damaged by the most recent tornadoes. On Tuesday, Bo Mitchell, a state legislator, walked through the damage created by the most recent storm carrying a gas can. Mr. Mitchell's Nashville district in the General Assembly does not include the neighborhood, but he was there helping a friend wielding a chainsaw. Mr. Mitchell, a Democrat, said he remembered one of the previous outbreaks vividly. "I met my wife in the '98 storm," he said. And in 2008, 55 people were killed by an outbreak of tornadoes that swept through 5 southern states, including Tennessee, where 31 people died. The outbreak, on February 7, 2008, also coincided with the Super Tuesday primaries during that presidential election year. "The wrath of God is the only way I can describe it," Phil Breedson, the governor of Tennessee at the time, said just after he surveyed the toll from a helicopter. "I'm used to seeing roofs of houses blown over. These houses were down to their foundations.